Okay, we've been, environmental groups and just people who are environmentally aware have been concerned about these plastic bags and their effect on the environment. And what we're finding in the United States, we have cities now that are banning these plastic bags. San Francisco's banned them. I believe San Francisco spends about $20 million a year just removing these bags from their sewer systems, which is a lot of money that could have gone to something more useful for the city. And what we're finding in nature is that animals are just eating them and dying. The country of Kenya has actually banned them from the country because it was killing so many wildlife and essentially polluting the parks. And the alternative is to go to a cloth bag like this one. So instead of going to Walmart or wherever you tend to shop and picking up their plastic bag, taking your own cloth bag with you. We found a video on YouTube a few months ago from Make magazine, and they showed how you could take these plastic bags and melt them together to form one heavy duty bag that then essentially is usable for the rest of your life. And it was a no-brainer. Just instead of making the cloth ones, we can get people to pick these up out of the environment, melt them, turn them into plastic bags, and stop Walmart or other stores from using these and bringing your own bags and picking them up out of the environment. So it's killing two birds with one stone. It was a great idea, a real no-brainer.
Okay, so one of the first steps in making your bag is cutting the bag and preparing it in order to melt it. And one of the first steps that we're going to do is we're going to cut the bottom in the little creases so we can maximize using as much bag as we can. So after we cut along the seams on the bottom, the next step is we're going to cut off the handles because they're going to be very hard to iron, and they're just going to get messy and it's just not going to work out. So we're going to cut off the handles. So that's going to leave us with a nice square bag. And what we want to do next is we want to turn the bag inside out, because once we get to the ironing stage, if we have the ink up against the wax paper that we're using, the ink is going to transfer onto the wax paper and it's just going to get really messy and get disgusting. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the bags inside out. You'll still be able to see the logo if you want it. If not, you can turn it around, use other bags to cover it up, or you can even cut them out and throw them in the recycling and then use just clear bags. So once you have that, fold it. You want to be able to have it to be 8-ply, and right now it's 2-ply. So we're just going to fold it twice. And if it's getting too small when you're folding it, you can just actually add it to more bags. And then once you have these stacked on top of each other, you're ready for the ironing process, which is step 2.
So I have bags that I've decided I'm going to make into fabric, and I'm laying them as stacked as well as I can on a piece of wax paper.
Yeah, you put wax paper.
And I put another piece of wax paper over the top. Yeah. And then I have my iron set on about polyester or rayon, I think it is.
Polyester rayon.
And I am just ironing it. And it pretty quickly fuses into a fabric. You have to be careful not to have your iron too hot, or the wax paper will stick to the plastic. But I think that's the biggest problem. Otherwise a little bit of trial and error and it works fine. All right, so here is some finished fabric right there.
And if you squeeze this back and forth in your fingers, you can tell if it's adhered or not, and none of this is breaking loose, so it's adhered quite nicely.
With this bag, since these were thicker bags to begin with, we only had to fuse just 2 layers. We didn't have to do the full 8. And he chose a blue for the front, a blue for the back, and another black one for a flap. And so we just made, we just laid it out in one long piece, and then we did the side seams. And then he actually used a trash sack for the handle, which we just cut into really thin strips, and we attached on the sides. And then we're going to use probably just some adhesive Velcro for the flap so that it'll stay shut.
Okay, so there's a couple other things you probably should know. You're going to have to do a lot of experimenting with irons and temperature to get everything at the right temperature, and different ideas that you think will or won't work out. This is an example, and you can probably see it through my shirt. The iron was too hot, and so we melted very quickly through this. If the iron's too cool, you can rub your fingers and this will separate, and this is adhered very nicely, but we just got it too hot right here. So if you start seeing this showing up in your work, then you've got it too hot. The nice thing is you can put one ply over the top, one ply over the back, re-iron it, and seal that up. So if you've got a project you really like and you're right there and right at the end, and you find out you've melted too much, you can actually save it pretty quickly. One of the projects I tried to do was to get the biggest possible sheet of, in this case I was looking for just white plastic, and the problem with getting a sheet this big, as soon as you start ironing, the sheet will start warping and bending around that iron, and then you end up with a really warped, very difficult to work with piece of plastic. So as you try to sew, this will actually bend your sewing machine off one way or the other as you fight your way through this plastic. So smaller sizes about this big seem to work okay, much smaller work really easily. The other thing we came across, if you turn, when you do your page, if the ink side is facing out, not only will it leave a imprint of that onto the wax paper, that ink will show up on here and then be transferred to some of your other projects. Often the ink will actually stick to the wax paper and adhere the wax paper and everything together, and you'll end up with this big mess. Now you can remove the wax paper, it just takes a lot of time. So when you're doing these pages, make sure the ink side is facing to the inside, and that'll avoid those problems. And that's it. So if we can turn these plastic bags into something permanent, these bags can be collected then from the environment. And the question is, how do you get people to go out into the environment and collect those bags themselves? You have to add some sort of value to it, and by making your own plastic bag, in this case this just little satchel, students are making, we have a lot of students here making them right now, collecting these bags from different areas. So it's cleaning the environment. By using these instead of getting new ones from the store every time, you're preventing more bags from being placed into the environment. You're cutting down on the oil required to make these bags. These are petroleum products, so you're cutting down on that. It's a win-win-win all the way around. Okay, so what we'd like to do, what we'd like to see ultimately with these bags, is that the news just be spread that this is something you can do with these plastic bags and make just really neat bags and help clean up your environment. So we're looking right now for funding opportunities to send students from Doane out over the summer to educate other groups. So we're sending people to Girl Scout groups, Boy Scout groups, 4-H clubs, other environmental groups, the Roots and Shoots organization, and just spread the word. And that's our real hope and dream with the current project that we're doing right now, is just to get the word out and people will start doing it. We've seen people, you can crochet with this, we've seen people make raincoats. You could literally patch your roof with this if you needed to. There's a lot of really neat things you can do with this material.